Hello everyone, welcome back again to my channel. And today I decided to do something casual, that is to solve three life and death problems to practice our reading. This video is pretty much really good for everyone except if you're a high Dan level or professional who's really good at reading. Um, but this is especially good for people who are trying to march into the Dan level. Let's first look at the problem on the bottom left. So before I start, I really want to state that I'm gonna do something really awful for you guys today because yeah, I really want to practice the reading. So I'm not gonna. A lot of times I'm not gonna put the stones on the board immediately when we are doing reading. So in this way, you get a chance to read things out. So let's just first set up the problem. So we're missing a stone here, basically. White plays the D1 first. And then it's black's turn. Blacks are trying to kill white in the corner. So let's start with my thought process. Usually when I go through a life and death problem, I would read by method of elimination. Black turns at F2, white's going to block at E2. And then that's definitely not going to kill white because white has an eye at D2. Now, if we if we peep at either E1 or E2, white is going to cut us off at F1 and F2 respectively. And then we are not going to break the eye really, right? So what we have left basically is F1 as well as B1 at this point. So first of all, if we play out F1, looks like it's going to be a very nice Tsuji. If white plays E1 against our F1, then we can extend at B1. If white plays F2, then we have a throw in at D2, right? So this is kind of awful because for players not really good at reading, you have to imagine a lot of stones being on the board when they're really not there. You have to kind of imagine this in your head, but this is exactly what my point is. My purpose is to practice your reading. So again, black plays F1, white blocks at E1, black extends at B1, white blocks at F2. Looks like there are two spaces inside white's eye, but then black has a throw in at D2, which really breaks white's eye. So for those people who are not sure what I'm talking about, is when black plays here. Obviously, white cannot block here because we now have Atari. White connects, we connect, and white is dead. White obviously cannot play E2, right? For obvious reasons, white has to play F2. And then we have a throw in here. So white cannot play C1 anymore. White has to capture, but then we can capture. And now white is dead. This is what I was reading. I needed to do that awful process of not placing the stones on the board immediately for you to practice. So it looks like that's the solution, isn't it? But before that, we have to read out different variations, right? When black plays here, we said a couple of things, right? Like we said E1, and the different moves obviously don't work. If we play F2, we can squeeze in at E1. If you play E2, we can also squeeze in at E1. E1 is our vital point, but white is not in a rush to play it immediately. White is going to play out B1 first. And now white is kind of alive, right? So if we connect, then white is going to play E1. We no longer have the B1, and we no longer have the throw-in working. Now, what about if we peep white at E2 first? Looks like that's an interesting move, but after white connects at D2, it looks like our E2 stone is in trouble, right? If we don't play an extra move, white is going to capture us with F2 move. But in the meantime, we have a problem at B2, so we can't, it's a Miai situation, right? So we can't kill white in that way either. So playing this out, after this exchange, we have a B3 problem and we have a F2 problem. All right. So looks like white has a resistance at b1, and then looks like b1 should be our move to start with. So first move black's gonna play out. It's gonna play b1. Against this move, first of all, we'll read out a couple of moves that don't work by method of elimination. First of all, c1 is not going to work because black cannot Atari at e1 after white connects. Black can play pretty much anything or not even play anything. White is already dead. So c1 does not work. Connecting at d2 does not work, obviously. Jumping at f1, black is going to push first at f2 after you block black Ataris at c1, and you will have two false eyes. So that will not work either. Now, what about we play e1? It looks like the vital point, but after black turns at f2, when we block, then there's an Atari at c1, and then that's also dead. The only defense for white is to play f2. So at this point, you might be excited. You'd be like, yeah, I know the answer to that. We cannot Atari at c1 because white can connect at d2. So we need to throw in first at d2, right? That's the answer to the question. We can play here, and then we have a ko alive, right? And then you might be celebrating that that this is the end of the problem. But this is what I mean. So for a lot of players, is especially people trying to march in a down level, but also players in their high down level, even they just assume something to be true, but they are lazy and they refuse to read out every single variation. Uh, so this is not what I'm going to teach, right? Well, I'm not going to teach you guys to rely on your intuition. Rather, I want you to read out every single move. So black Atari's c1 does not work. We already saw that. We have a throwing at d2. That's going to guarantee us a ko kill. So we're going to put that option on the table right now. We have to compare it against other options. Can we play e1? If we play e1, white Ataris at f1, when we Atari c1, white connects, then our e1 is dead. It's a suicide stone. So that does not work. If we play e2, white is going to play e1, and then it's not going to work. What about g1, right? If we play g1, white blocks at f1, then that doesn't look like it's going to work either, right? Even after the throw in, white just captures. When Atari white just connect, our g1 is doing nothing to help. It actually hurted us. So what about f1? That's a move that we haven't read out. If we play f1, wait a second. f1 looks like a really good move, right? So if we play f1, white plays e1, then we have that really old school throw in at d2. Our old friend is coming back. So looks like white is clean dead, right? So we need to read this out again in our mind. When we hane at f1, white blocks at e1, then we throw in at d2. Well, what can happen? White cannot connect at c1 anymore. White has to capture at g1. Then we capture at c1. White is clean dead. Now, after we verify our reading, I know it's awful, guys, but bear with me. This is how you improve your reading. So now we play out the things I was talking about. And now we can see that white is dead. All right, so the way to clean kill white actually turns out to be play b1 first, and then hane, and then throw in. And now white is dead. So we read out pretty much every single variation in this problem to reach the conclusion that with a very nice sequence we can kill white in a clean fashion. All right, now let's look at the second problem on the bottom right. It's black to play first. So now we need to start somewhere with our thought process. Well, first we need to look at what if we squeeze at s7. When we play s7, white has no choice. White has to block at t5, right? So we squeeze, white also Ataris us at t5. After this, if we extend at t2, trying to do the same old nasty throw in, it looks like white can capture us first. And we don't have that throw-in working anymore because T6 stone is not on the board anymore, right? When the throw-in happens. So let's calm down and focus on the board and then imagine those stones being on the board. We play S7, white Ataris, we extend at T1, white captures us at T7. Then we throw in white can actually connect at T3. There's no shortage of liberty problems. All right, so let's play that out. If we play here, 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 no problem for white. So seems like the problem is without S7, right? Obviously, through some logical reasoning, we can see that, well, why do we give the chance to white to be able to capture our stone, right? Why can't we just pull the stone back? Then you imagine this in your head, you're like, yeah, that works. So this variation is going to work out for black now because white can no longer capture this really annoying stone at T6. All right, let's see. Let's read that out in our mind. White blocks at T5, we extend at T2, and then regardless of where white tries to make an I, we have a throw-in either direction. Okay, just imagine that on the board, and then try to struggle. Like it's a struggle. Like you have to struggle a little bit, and then figure out the answer. Okay, finally, play that on the board. Black extend. Now, if you play here, there's a throw in here. Right, you have to capture, and I can squeeze. And if white plays here, we have a throw in here, and then white is dead as well. Let's now look at the final question on the top right. This is a different question. Black plays first, and black is trying to make himself alive. It's a sort of similar shape, and then we have to figure out how black can live this time. First of all, if black plays the tiger's mouth at P19, with the knowledge that we have on the bottom left corner, is that white can just extend at R19 to kill us. Right? So we have just solved that problem. Instead of throw in, we have a Hane, and then we have this throw in, and black is dead. Now, to overcome that problem, we have seen from the knowledge from before that we need to have an R19 stone to start with. So it's not hard for us to figure out that we should play out either R19 or probably we should Atari at R17 first, then Atari at R19. But we have to verify this with our reading. So if we just Hane first, that's not hard to read out because white can just Atari at P18 and we're forced to make a ko at P19. So we have a ko on the table. So we have something, right? In worst case, we're about to die. We can just play out a ko alive. But we need to figure out if there's a better way to live. Sorry, if there's a better way to live. So R19 looks like it's working. It's working okay. We got a ko alive. What if we Atari first and then Atari? Well, that's definitely better than just hunting, right? Because we get to have this R19 in Sente. So we're gonna play that out. So till this point, no problem. We got our R19 stone in Sente. But this is where people make mistakes, right? This is where reading is more important than intuition or any principles that you've heard about life and death problems. So let's read out all the variations, right? First of all, if we play N18, white Atari said P18, then we have the same ko problem. So that was already on the table. We don't need to look at that variation. What if we play out the connect at P18 while white pushes N18, then we're dead? Now, it looks like the only possibility is for us to play P19, right? Looks like hey, now we have the R19 stone. You can no longer do anything. You can no longer extend. But as it turns out, now white is not going to be just playing things like N18. If you play here, black blocks, and then that's a clean alive. If you play N19, black blocks at O19, that is um, so. Well, what happens, right? Like this becomes complicated in your mind. So white plays out N19. Well, obviously we have to do something about it, so we block at O19, but then white can turn at S19. That is an Atari. Then we block at N18. White now has a throw in here, right? So that's already a problem. We see a ko uh, we see a ko in our mind. So if we play here, here, then we have the Atari. Black cannot no longer clean alive because you can't connect. You have to play here. And then we have a throw in here. Then you have to take, right? And we have an Atari here. So already this method becomes a co-alive. So it looks like our solution is a co-alive, right? And then you just move on, like let's play the co, and then let's see what happens in our game. But if you actually willing to read a little bit further, you actually enjoy this process of reading a lot, and then especially on the second line and first line. And I want to emphasize this: it's all the magic happen in first and second lines most of the time. So so this is a typical example of where you should spend more time reading first line and second line moves. It looks like it's a tiny space, but it contains enormous amount of variations. So we have looked at P19. We haven't looked at this O18 yet, right? What about this move? Well, if we play here, uh, white Ataris from the outside, we connect. Looks like we live. But what if white peeps at our vital point at P19 after we play there? Then looks like we're dead because if we connect at Q19, white's gonna pull the stone back and we're dead, right? So P18, O18 is also eliminated, but we haven't looked at this O19 move. Now, just imagine you play O19 on the board. What is white going to do, right? If white Atari is at P18, we can now connect, thanks to the O19 stone, connect at Q19. White Ataris, we connect again, and then we have an I. Okay, so let's place the stone on the board, or else it gets really difficult, I think. If we play here, black is going to connect. This is an I. And if white Ataris, we can connect thanks to our stone here. White cannot Atari like this. And finally, we have to read out some tricky variations such as the throw in here. Right? A lot of times these moves can make magic happen, but not in this case because when black captures, white Ataris, black connects, and now black is a clean alive. So this would be the answer for how black is going to live on the top side. So I hope you guys enjoy this thought process. This is actually really annoying of me, not placing stones on the board, but this is how you can improve your reading. It's by not having the stones on the board. But if you don't enjoy this process, that is perfectly okay. You should, if you don't take Go that seriously, you think it's just a game. Well, I guess everybody thinks it's a game. No one is not, no one's doing this as a profession. But if you enjoy the process of spending a little bit more time, especially on tiny area, you'll find that you can a lot of times defeat opponents that are slightly better than you, right? If you spend that amount of time and efforts to do things like you know what, I really want to think about the difference between P19, O19, and even N19. Well, we see N19 obviously does not work because we have Atari, so either P19 or O19, you'll find yourself winning a lot more games. And you'll see like your rank skyrocket.